In the early 1950s, a car came out of Spain that many people did not expect. It was not from Italy or Germany or the United Kingdom. It was from a company mostly known for building trucks. That company was called Empresa Nacional de Autocamiones S.A., or ENASA. In 1954, they introduced a car named Pegaso Z102. It looked fast, sounded powerful, and had an unusual story behind it. Spain was not known for fast sports cars, but this car tried to change that. The Pegaso Z102 was created under the leadership of Alfredo Ricart. Ricart was not new to car design. He had worked with Alfa Romeo in Italy before. After World War II, Ricart returned to Spain and took a job at ENASA. Most of the time, ENASA built buses and trucks, but Ricart convinced them to try something different, a high-performance sports car. It would be used to show off Spanish engineering skills and maybe even compete with other famous cars of the time. The Z102 was built with a steel frame that had many small holes in it to make it lighter but still strong. The body was designed by coach builders like Carrozzeria Touring from Milan, Italy, and Sauchic from Paris, France. These names may sound fancy, but their job was simple: make the car look nice and perform well. The engine was where things got serious. The Pegaso Z102 had a V8 engine made from aluminum. It came in different sizes: 2.5 liters, 2.8 liters, and even 3.2 liters. Some versions of the car had superchargers. One supercharged 2.8-liter version hit a top speed of 243 kilometers per hour, or around 151 miles per hour. At that time, it was the fastest production car in the world. That made some people in Italy and Germany a little uncomfortable. The Z102 also had an unusual suspension system. It used torsion bars in the front and a Dedion axle in the back. That helped the car handle corners better than many others at the time. Still, it was not perfect. Only about 84 Pegaso Z102s were ever built. Each one was different in small ways, depending on who ordered it and who built the body. The Pegaso Z102 was not a big success in terms of sales, but it still made history. It showed that even a truck company from Spain could surprise the world. Not bad for a car that came from a factory better known for building buses than breaking speed records. In the late 1950s, one car quietly rolled into the spotlight without making too much noise, but still caught the eyes of Hollywood stars and serious car lovers. This car was the 1957 Dual-Ghia D500. At first glance, it looked like just another stylish convertible from the past. But once you start digging into the story behind it, things get a lot more interesting. Built through a mix of American muscle and Italian design, the Dual-Ghia was more than just a fancy ride. It was a rare car born from two different worlds. The story begins with Eugene Casarol, an American businessman who owned Dual Motors. He made his fortune building vehicles for the military during World War II, and later became known for his interest in making luxury cars. Around this time, Dodge had been working on a series of concept cars called the Dodge Fire Arrow. These were stylish designs made by American designer Virgil Exner, and the bodies were built by an Italian coach builder named Carrozzeria Ghia in Turin, Italy. Eugene Casarol saw potential in these cars and bought the rights to the Fire Arrow design. He worked with Carrozzeria Ghia to create a new car called the Dual-Ghia. The name came from the mix of Dual Motors and Ghia's design work. The process of building each car was a bit of a world tour. First, Dodge chassis were built in Detroit, Michigan. Then they were shipped all the way to Turin, Italy, where Ghia made the custom bodies by hand. After that, the cars were sent back to the United States for final assembly, where engineers added Dodge engines and transmissions. The Dual-Ghia used a 5.2-liter V8 engine, also known as the Dodge Red Ram D500. This engine produced around 230 horsepower, which was powerful for the time. It had a 2-speed Chrysler PowerFlight automatic transmission and could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 8 seconds. Not bad for a car that weighed about 3,600 pounds. It had a wheelbase of 2,921 millimeters and a total length of 5,169 millimeters. The front had independent coil spring suspension, while the rear used a live axle with leaf springs. The car was offered mainly as a convertible and was known for its smooth, clean design. It had front bucket seats and a dashboard filled with gauges. The materials were high quality, and most cars came with disc-type wheels. Every part of it was made with care, and because the process was long and expensive, only about 117 units were ever built between 1956 and 1958. Despite the high cost, the Dual-Ghia D500 became a favorite among celebrities. Frank Sinatra owned one, so did Dean Martin and Peter Lawford. These cars were not sold in dealerships. Eugene Casserole himself chose who could buy one. As of 2006, only 32 were still known to exist. The 1957 Dual-Ghia D500 was not a car you saw every day, unless you were hanging out with the Rat Pack. It did not break sales records, and it did not win big races, but it told a story of teamwork between American engineers and Italian craftsmen. And it proved that sometimes the rarest things are not the loudest, they are just quietly cool. In the early 1950s, Italy was rebuilding after the war. Factories were getting busy, people were dreaming big, and car companies wanted to do more than just build small family cars. In the middle of all this, Fiat, a company known for making practical vehicles, decided to do something different. They built a car that was not meant for the average Italian family. It was strange, expensive, and fast. This was the 1953 Fiat 8V, known in Italian as the Fiat Autovu. The name itself confused people. At the time, Ford had a strong grip on the V8 name in Italy, so Fiat decided to flip it around and call their car the 8V instead. This car was never meant to go into mass production. It started as a side project inside Fiat, led by engineer Dante Giacosa and designer Luigi Rappi. It made its first appearance at the 1952 Geneva Motor Show. The public was surprised. Fiat had never made anything like this before. Under the hood, the 8V had a 2-liter engine, exactly 1,996 cubic centimeters. It was a V8 engine with a 70-degree angle between the cylinder banks. It was originally meant for a luxury sedan project that never happened, but instead of throwing it away, Fiat decided to use it in this sports car. The engine came in a few versions. The first version, called Tipo 104.000, made 105 metric horsepower at 5,600 revolutions per minute. This version could go up to around 190 kilometers per hour. Later, the engine was improved and called Tipo 104.003. It had different camshaft timing and produced 115 metric horsepower at 6,000 revolutions per minute. Then came the Tipo 104.006 version with a higher compression ratio of 8.75 to 1. It made 127 metric horsepower at 6,600 revolutions per minute. All versions used a 4-speed manual transmission and rear-wheel drive. The car had independent suspension all around and drum brakes on every wheel. Not fancy, but it worked. The Fiat 8V was not very big. It measured 4,040 millimeters long, 1,570 millimeters wide, and 1,290 millimeters tall. The wheelbase was 2,400 millimeters. The track width, front and back, was 1,290 millimeters. And the weight? About 2,050 pounds. Not bad for something made in the early 1950s. Fiat only made 114 of these cars between 1952 and 1954. Just 34 of them were made with Fiat's own factory bodywork. The rest were sent to different Italian coach builders, companies that built custom car bodies. Zagato was one of them. They made around 30 bodies, many in lightweight aluminum. They were known for their double bubble roof design, which looked funny but helped with aerodynamics and headroom. Ghia made another version called the Supersonic. This one looked like it was ready to fly, with tail fins and a smooth shape inspired by jet planes. Then there was Vignale. They made some very unique versions too, like the one called the Demon Rouge. That one looked like it came out of a science fiction comic book. Even though the 8V was not made in large numbers, it did quite well in racing. It won the Italian 2-liter Grand Touring Championship every year from 1954 to 1959. Most of the time, it was driven by private racers, people who bought the car and raced it themselves, not factory teams. Today, the Fiat 8V is seen as a rare piece of history. It was built during a time when companies like Fiat were willing to try strange ideas, It was not perfect, it was expensive, odd-looking to some, and probably too fast for the narrow roads of 1950s Italy. But it had character, and sometimes that is enough to make people remember something forever, or at least until the next oil change. In the late 1960s, a small British car company created one of the most unusual sports cars ever made. It was light, low, and made of wood. Yes, actual wood. This car was the Marcos GT1600, and its story is just as strange as its design. Marcos Engineering Limited was founded in 1959 by two men, Jem Marsh and Frank Costin. The name Marcos came from combining their last names, Marsh and Costin. Their goal was to make fast and light cars, but they did things their own way. Frank Costin had worked in the aircraft industry during World War II. He helped design the de Havilland Mosquito, a wooden warplane. So when it came time to design a car chassis, he used what he knew, plywood. The Marcos GT1600 used a chassis made from laminated plywood, which made it very light, but also stiff and strong. The body was made of fiberglass to keep the weight down. The car's total weight was only about 1,891 pounds. The shape of the Marcos GT1600 was designed by brothers Dennis and Peter Adams. It had a very low and long body, almost like it had been flattened by a steamroller. But it worked well. It was aerodynamic, and it looked different from anything else on the road. At just 1,080 millimeters tall, it was shorter than some people's waist height. Getting into the car felt like climbing into a shoebox, but once inside, the driver was nearly lying down. The long hood and low roof made the car look fast even when it was parked. Under the hood, the Marcos GT1600 used a 1.6-liter Ford Kent Crossflow inline-4 engine. This engine made about 100 horsepower at 5,500 revolutions per minute and had 142 newton-meters of torque at 3,600 revolutions per minute. It used a 4-speed manual transmission and sent power to the rear wheels. Even though it was not a high-powered engine, the light weight of the car made it quick. It could go from 0 to 97 kilometers per hour in about 6.8 seconds. The top speed was around 185 kilometers per hour, or about 115 miles per hour. The suspension setup was pretty simple. The front used wishbones with coil springs, the rear had a solid axle with radius arms, a transverse bar, and coil springs. It was not fancy, but it did the job. The car handled well and felt sharp on winding roads. Marcos made only about 192 of these cars between 1967 and 1969. It never became a big hit, but it did get some attention. One of the most famous moments for the Marcos GT1600 was when it appeared in the British television series The Saint. In the final episode, Roger Moore, playing Simon Templar, drove the car. That gave it a small taste of fame before disappearing again. Today, the Marcos GT1600 is remembered mostly by car fans and collectors. It is not famous like a Ferrari or a Porsche, but it is not boring either. It is made of wood, shaped like a pancake, and once driven by a man who became James Bond. That is not a bad story for a car that weighs less than a modern mini-fridge.